Gregory, and I'm from Hauxton Parish Council, but I chair the LLF.
I'm Bridget Smith, I'm Vice Chair, I'm the District Councillor representing the Gamlingay Ward and some of the villages of which are affected by the proposals.
Metzinger, I am the County and City Councillor for Newnham Ward in the west of Cambridge.
I'm Janet Lockwood, I'm the District Councillor for Hauxton and Hauxton.
I'm Niall O'Byrne, I'm Chair of Hauxton Parish Council. I should be putting forward a resolution this evening on behalf of Hauxton Parish Council.
Kate Richardson, National Team of Minutes.
Tim Watkins, and I'm Project Manager for the Western Orbital.
Ashley Hello, I'm the Team Leader for the Public Transport Project in the County Council.
To those in the audience.
I'm Stephen Coates and I represent the Save the Westfields.
Bev Edwards, Chairman of Barton Parish Council.
Who else have we got? Robin. Oh,
Angela Chadwick-Healy, Chair of Madingley Road Area Residents Association.
I'm Jane Ward, Chair of Hauxton Parish Council.
Jenny Julian, Chair of Hazelwood Parish Council.
I'm Andrew Roberts from the Trumpeton Residents Association.
Robin Purdue, I'm representing Cambridge past, present and future.
Rita Langan, Cranmer Road Residents Association. Ellen Melchinsky, representing the Gulfway Residents Association.
David Neville from Godchester Parish Council.
Tim Scott, Cumberton District Council, and in the very hot soon. Literally.
Charles Mario, District Councillor for Shelford.
Anybody else?
Edward Lee, standing in for Lynn Hyatt for Smart Cambridge Transport.
Lillian Brumgard from Hister Road.
But we have an uncontroversial member request, which is the South Newnham Neighbourhood Forum. So this is Jean Glasberg. So I think we should vote on whether we accept Jean.
Yes, I'm Jean Glasberg, South Newnham Neighbourhood Forum. We've just been recognised by the City Council as a neighbourhood forum, and so we do have the status now of Parish Council.
Shall we? Yeah, can we vote on that, please? Is somebody counting?
Thank you.
Anybody against? Anybody abstaining?
What colour do you hold up for
Thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to these meetings.
I mean, it's a lot less mad than usual in terms of numbers, but we do have a big agenda here, so lots to discuss. So you can be concise, because the aim is to finish by 8. There will be plenty of opportunity for the public to make contributions, but please only do it when invited. Otherwise we'll get into all kinds of mess here, particularly as there's no microphones. And however cross or frustrated we might feel about things, I always like to remind you that the officers are here, it's their job, and so we need to be respectful. Can we have the next slide? So I just wanted to give a very quick update on what the LLF has been doing. Can everybody hear me? What the LLF has been doing since our last meeting in March. This LLF is about the Western Orbital, but our LLF also concerns the Camden to Cambridge busway scheme. So I just want to give a very brief update on what's been going on. So after the March meeting, we met with the executive board, the head transport officers, and the CEO of City Deal to present the option 6. 10 LLF members put themselves forward, and the full geographical spread was represented, so Campbell to central Cambridge or Newnham. It was a good meeting, but then there was a bit of disagreement about what was agreed. And so a series of letters passed backwards and forwards. But those we were talking to agreed to reassess option 6, or to assess option 6 alongside 3 and 3A and option 1. And they agreed to make recommendations to the board, i.e. to themselves, in July to incorporate option 6 into the appraisal process, and also agreed that the LLF could see the commissioning brief, both for option 6 and for the reassessment of Park and Rides, which we've seen. And Atkins were appointed to do the option 6 assessment, and Mott MacDonald had been appointed to do the Park and Ride reassessment. It was also agreed that then a smaller subset group of the 10 that went could take part in technical workshops with Atkins. They've had 2 of these. So again, we wanted the geographical spread. So Steve Jones, representing the 23 parish councils, Gabriel Fox, representing the quarter to 6 quadrant, and Rod Cantrell has been representing east of the M11. And they have been looking at and assessing the validity of and evidence to justify the busway in the new Park and Ride site. And they've been reviewing with Atkins the criteria and methodology for assessing and comparing 1, 3, 3A and 6 and the Park and Ride sites to ensure from our point of view that the process is fair and transparent. Even if in the end something is chosen that we don't like, we need to know it's been fairly and transparently done. There's been a backwards and forwards. They've had 2 meetings, but I've asked them to report back in full at the July LLF A428 meeting. Steve, have you got anything to add to that? We also agreed in the last meeting to take part in the Park and Ride workshop, which we did 2 weeks ago, or some of us did. Again, there was a bit of disagreement about the invitee list, because we had thought it was going to be an LLF-driven arrangement, but what happened was we had 3 LLF representatives there, and then some of the parishes. So again, Rod represented, so the 3 LLF representatives were myself, Rod and Steve. And then other parishes and other people were invited independently. There was a lot of toing and froing over it, but overall it seemed to work quite well. There was certainly overwhelming support to have a Park and Ride 1 junction down from Madden and Marsh. And for many of the same reasons which I think we're going to hear this evening about what's happening at junction 11. It's on grounds of good access being sited before congestion starts, connectivity with the road network.
What does down mean when you say 1 junction?
So away, so west.
Right, thank you.
So at Scotland Farm has always been the preferred site for the LLF. And of course environmental impact. So they're the things that we, and there was a remarkable amount of unanimity in that workshop. Anybody else who was there, does anybody want to add anything?
Yes, a number of us were concerned that the Scotland Farm location would open up Dry Drayton, or would introduce more rat running into Dry Drayton. So we did want that to be looked at very carefully and mitigated as far as possible.
Thank you. Finally, there was a workshop in Barton just this last week. Again, it wasn't an LLF, it didn't turn out to be an LLF one. We were invited, and we would have said that was less successful. Would you agree with that, Bev?
Yeah.
And that was to discuss Park and Cycle there. What we would like, I think, coming out of that, the discussions afterwards, we would like the invitee list to be much more carefully thought through, because for that workshop, it's largely Barton people and a few others when actually we could have done with an invitee list that took in the whole corridor and all of the those affected, potentially affected, and those that would want to use the carpet cycle. We didn't really feel like it was, and particularly as we don't actually know how the outcomes of the workshops are going to be used. If we're running various workshops with only small numbers of people invited, then how can everybody understand what everybody else's needs and concerns are? So that would be, I think that was a general concern of the LLF attendees going forward. So, I mean, it would be, I think it would be really useful if we could have a workshop to discuss workshops and how they can be organised. Does anybody else want to add anything about either of those workshops? Yeah.
It was about the workshop at Camborne that, for me, I was, until that point, I had been led to believe that the bus operators did not want to go farther than a couple of mile radius of Cambridge, and we heard it there. You know, it's most clear that they don't really mind how far they go, as long as they've got punters getting on the buses. And so it sort of more reinforced our views, whereas I thought they were coming at it from they only want to go a mile and a half out of Cambridge.
Yeah.
That was my take on it.
I've only discovered about these workshops in the last few days, actually, and as a member of the LLF, it's a bit odd to discover that at that late stage. So, kind of after they've happened, and not even to know that they were going on. So I think it would be useful. I understand that you can't invite all the members of the LLF to every workshop because it would just be too many people discussing and you'd never achieve anything. But I think that for members of the LLF to at least be informed that the workshops were happening and to know who the people who had been invited to the workshops were would give them much more validity. So I wonder whether that's something that you can make sure that you do in future.
We have to decide as an LLF actually what our policy towards workshops are, because of course we've said in the past that we wouldn't take part in a workshop that discussed an offer and possible. So actually what we have now are workshops that are not decided by us with a membership, with an invitee list, which is under our control.
Yeah.
So we have to, and that's the consequence of
Well,
it.
I think
because they're not LLF workshops.
I think at the very least, it would be helpful for members to know that the workshops were going on.
I didn't, for instance, know until the chief executive of Cambridge PPF told me yesterday that there'd been a workshop to discuss equestrian and pedestrian access along the busway, for example. I mean, actually, we might have had suggestions for who might have taken part in that. So, I would suggest that maybe we suggest that we have a meeting to discuss how these workshops might take place on the areas that affect this LLF.
Just one other thing. I mean, if I give an example of that LLF, I mean, at one of the tables you had a county transport officer, and you had Adrian Shepherd, out of 5, who were actually writing down lots of ideas on this board and being described as a community. And maybe I'm in a parallel universe, but I don't think transport officers are the community. That's just a thought.
Yeah.
So lots of other people are being put there who just...
Helen, I don't know whether this is a point that relates to the wider issue of LLF and workshops, because I was at the A1307 workshop yesterday, and we had on our table, we had Ian Bates on the City Deal board taking part in the survey and ticking options as part of the community. So, I mean, it's a general query here.
I mean, well, what would we like to do about this? Do we want to write to the City Deal? Do we want to suggest a meeting to discuss that workshop?
That'd be really good. I mean, to have clarity about how you want to be involved. So, for example, with the Barton workshop, I mirrored the method, I suppose, of the 428 that sort of involves the people along the direct corridor from Cambridge to Camborne, and therefore the Western Orbital is predominantly from junction 13 to junction 11 and sort of stops at Barton and Hauxton. And so therefore to sort of encompass areas beyond that, as was mentioned at the workshop, wouldn't be consistent with what happened in the 428, where you might drag in people from communities right up to St Neots. If you're talking about who might use facilities and things like that. So certainly a view from the LLF would be welcome, yeah.
Because what you'll get, so with the Barton one, for example, yeah, so most of us there don't want those park and cycle sites near the village, but actually can't really tell you why you would need them at all. So we needed people further away who might then use them to come along and say, well, actually, I think there would be 200 people using this, and we would need X, Y, Z. But actually, we accept what you're saying, that you don't want it that close to your village, and then there can be some toing and froing, and people can understand one another's.
And similarly with the 428, with stretching impact as far as but it depends then on the remit of how far you would go.
I think it's important to stress as well, Helen, the workshops are part of the process. They're not intended to be definitive statements or what the candidates think. They're intended to be snapshots, have a range of opinion. They are limited in terms of bringing in a certain number of people to make them productive. And I think we've, for example, said with the Park and Ride workshop, we're going to repeat it later on, so then we can look again. So there's no intention there for them to be sort of definitive and us pulling out information saying this is what the community thinks. So what we're trying to sort of, it's all part of what we call information gathering process.
But I think we do need a role in selecting who goes on them, because just to give us three, and then no real input into anybody else, really just.
That's fine. Absolutely.
We were set up by City Deal to be.
Absolutely, but
Well, if I just ask for the rule here, I don't think we're here to discuss the LFF. We're here to discuss the proposed M11 corridor and the Hauxton car park. You have the opportunity on the 13th of July to discuss the LFF. If you want people to come along, open meeting or whatever, but not here. Can we not move on to the subject in question?
Well, it is the LLF, right? So we
It's the
are
LLF.
the LLF.
The point of this meeting is supposed to be the Hauxton car
Yes, and
park.
we will get on to that.
Well,
Okay.
we're now 25 minutes through the meeting, and you aren't even past section 1.
I'm sorry about that. But we aim to
We
finish
should be
at 8.
moving on.
Shall we write a letter to City Deal? Do we agree on
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yes.
I will go ahead. Are you happy that I go ahead and draft that?
Yes, that's good.
Good. Finally, we've done the new member request. The review of LLFs by City Deal. Bridget is going to introduce.
I'll be very, very quick. So because I'm leader of the Lib Dem group in South Cambs, I have a place on the Assembly. So there's been lots happening. I hope you've seen the press release that's been in the Cambridge News today about the sort of rebranding and reorganisation of the governance of the City Deal, which is underway. And this actually really is important because it relates very much to how the LLFs work and what influence we have. So there is a rebranding going on. There's an attempt to sort of clarify the vision, and that's as it is. I won't comment on that. There's also, I took part in a workshop a couple of days ago where we had 2 consultants presenting to members of the Assembly about the very early stages of their work. One was looking at how the LLFs work, and the other was looking at how the consultation's working. Now, the gentleman who is looking at the LLFs, I was very encouraged by him. He sees the value of them. He thinks it's admirable, to use his words, that the LLFs have been brought in so early on in the process, because normal practice is that LLFs only get put in place after planning permission has been given, by which point all the decisions are being made and we don't have an opportunity to influence them. On the consultation, again, it was very, very early. I was slightly concerned that the consultant thought that all the consultation exercises should happen in much more centralised locations in the city, and I pointed out that actually, South Cambs is a key player in this, and actually stuff has to go on in South Cambs as well as in the city. So that's very early stage work which is going to feed onto you. There's a move to change the way the Assembly and the board work. Currently, they've been sort of mirror images of each other with lots of repetition and not a lot of opportunity for the Assembly to influence. So they're going to hold the Assembly meetings far in advance of the board meetings now. The Assembly are going to be far more involved in the earlier stages, the earlier development work. And the board members are going to have portfolios, so you'll have a board member responsible for housing, one responsible for transport and so on. So there will be clearer routes of communication and responsibilities there. It's not as aspirational and dramatic as I personally would have liked it, but I think it's certainly a move in the right direction. So once we know more, I will feed you more information. Are there any questions before we move on? The race, okay? Tim.
Okay, so for people who weren't here earlier, my name's Tim Watkins. I'm the project manager for the Western Orbital. I'm going to run through the items as they are on the agenda as per the presentation. There's due to be somebody attending from Highways England who is here? Fantastic. I hadn't seen him sneaking. So there's no need to move that about in the agenda. I'd just like to say that really the purpose of today, from my perspective as project manager, is to update you on the work that's happened since the consultation, which was in February and March last year, and the December board decisions that happened in December 2016. So, there we go, 1 second. Sorry about the technical issue. Yeah. Okay, so just a little bit of background about Western Orbital, but I think as it's extremely hot, I think we can read what's written there. I'll just remind members of the LLF, it's really not been a bespoke liaison forum about Western Orbital since November last year. And as I say, that's really the purpose for today. It's information giving and information gathering. So any points obviously Katie will note down here and will be brought into the project as part of the evaluation of the study, as well as the workshops that have been undertaken as well. Okay, so as I mentioned, the Greater Cambridge City Deal Board met in December 2016. There was a report presented, and these were the recommendations. They were to note the public consultation that happened, as I mentioned, at the beginning of the 2016. There would be an ongoing strategic assessment to support Tranche 1 schemes, which are the A428, hence why this liaison forum is shared effectively between the 428 and Western Orbital, as well as some interaction with the 1307 City Deal scheme. There was to take a key role in working with Highways England. As I've mentioned, there'll be more on that later. But the interaction about a managed motorway, the improved junctions, bus priorities and considerations about the Girton interchange. So from the county's council's perspective, as well as the city deal, there's been a joint working group set up with Highways England in order to facilitate that working. And then more bespoke Western Orbital measures were to carry out further assessment of the park and ride at junction 11. I'll talk a bit about that in a second. Park and ride, park and cycle at junction 12 as opposed to park and ride. An assessment of the slip road junctions at junction 13. I would also like to mention, people may or may not be aware of another City Deal project that's also in Tranche 2, that is the Greenways project. The reason I mention that, because it interacts with the corridor. It's on the same timescale as the Western Orbital, so it's running from 2020 to 2025. But the early work is beginning on that now, and there is overlap, and the two projects should dovetail in relation to Junction 12 and Junction 13. junction 12 and junction 11, and similarly with the A428, there'll be an understanding and including in the assessment with the greenways for that project as well. Okay, so that's the issues that I've just mentioned about Highways England and the road investment strategy. We have Eric Cooper here today, who are you going to have a give your presentation? No. So this is Eric Cooper from Highways England, and he's going to give a bit of an insight into the road investment strategy, otherwise known as the RIS strategy. It's the way they sort of look at schemes. Well, I won't steal your thunder, Eric.
That's fine. Shall I sit down in the front?
Yeah.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me to the meeting this evening. My name is Eric Cooper. I'm in our Operations Directorate of the Highways England, and we look after the day-to-day operation of the network in this area. We also deal with spatial planning matters, which is dealing with local plans, planning applications, and also the longer-term strategy about dealing with making sure the network works in the future. We're talking about managed motorway there. I mean, the key thing for Highways England is about accessibility, economic growth, and actually making sure that everyone can move from A to B. So in looking at the road network there, whilst we look after the 428, the A14 and the M11, we can't look at those in isolation to the rest of the road network. And as Tim has said, we work closely with Cambridgeshire County Council trying to define solutions. And there's two elements here. There's access into Cambridge and the communities, and there's actually travelling through. Now, through the road investment strategy, I won't explain, as people have got questions to ask, what road investment strategy is. Hopefully we all know what that is. The existing one runs from 2015 to 2020. Through that, government has set out that the A14 will be upgraded. We all know about that. It's on mark to be delivered by 2020. And in addition, we've got the A428 from Blackcat to Claxon Gibbet. So those are the two key schemes currently. We are approaching 2020, and there will be the next roads period, which will be supported by the next roads investment strategy. Now that is a strategy which is actually delivered by government. I apologise, I didn't appreciate there would be something on the screen here. I've got some sheets here which I'll sort of pass around, and possibly that could be circulated to part of the minutes to some people, which will, if I just, I've got 10 copies, if I just sort of do a couple of pieces of work, if I keep one for myself, and possibly I can just sort of pass around, people can see that. Now what this does is just explain the road investment strategy process, and it's quite important to understand that, because it's where our funding, where our funding comes from and how we actually make the decisions. And it's not Highways England ultimately makes the decisions, we make recommendations to government. So the first stage of that is producing something which is called a route strategy. Now, this is published, it's on government's website, and there are a number of route strategies around the country. Now, this particular one is known as the London to Leeds strategy, which includes the M11. Now, the purpose of this document was to gather information and evidence, because everything we spend is public money, and government needs to demonstrate, and we on behalf of them need to show them how that money can be used effectively. So the strategy is to say what are the issues and what are the problems, and ultimately where do we need to go there to identify solutions. So this document, and it's not rocket science, you read that and say, well, it's common sense, but you still need to set it out. So in terms of our area, we're interested here, in the M11, so I say not rocket science, the M11 between junction 10 and 13 is suffering from congestion and safety issues. I mean, it's blindly obvious, but we all know it is, but it's set out there in black and white. There's other issues, junction 14, there is a bit of flooding at the M11 near junction 14, and we talked about congestion, junction 9A, and it's key to local employment campuses, and each have their own growth plans. So that's what it says about the M11. Now, the outcome of this at the end of this is what we're going to do. And it says we're going to take those forward in a series of work streams. And so there is a work stream looking at the M11 between junctions 6 and 14. And it's to cover exactly those sort of things which I've just mentioned. That bit of work, which is currently underway, will come out with option appraisal reports. Now, those option appraisal reports are like a business case. So they've said, here's a problem, here's what potential solutions are, and typically what it's going to cost, and whether indicatively whether it can be value for money. We are doing those at the moment, and we will complete those, I think I've got it down here, but those what we call strategic studies by the, it's going to be late autumn. All those reports will then go to government, and this sheet which I've circulated, I hope somebody will see it, will see these various stages. So we've created these sort of business cases and these sort of areas where we think there should be interventions. There will be then a document called the Strategic Road Network Initial Report. So it's taking all those together and saying, this is what Highways England think we need to do across the country to drive forward improvements to the road network over and beyond what we're doing at the moment. That will come out in November this year, and that will be available for everyone to see. It's going to be a public consultation on that, so you'll have the opportunity to make your own comments. That's where Highways England stop in this process, and from then, the Department of Transport, they take on the decision phase, and whilst we will be there in the background, provide evidence, answer questions, that sort of thing, it's really led by the Department of Transport. So they will then develop the second road investment strategy, and they will draft a strategic business case, and from that will come that road investment strategy. And ultimately, it will be a decision for ministers what's going to come out of it. And clearly, whilst we have here priorities in our part of the country, there are other priorities in the country, and they will make that decision. And therefore, that next road investment strategy will come out sort of in 2019, ready for the next 5-year period. The other interesting element is said, well, that is all very well, but is the money there to do it? You may be aware, again, it's all available on the internet, that funding for the street road, the SRN, the street road network, is actually via car tax, and there's approximately £6 billion a year going to be available from that. This is why we can now deliver things like the A14, the Lower Thames Crossing, and other such schemes. And I think that's fantastic news, because it is ring-fenced. We may have had once upon a time what we called the roads programme. The government brought these things out, and one by one the schemes disappeared. And we all sat around waiting for the next time they're going to put them back in the programme. We have a set 5-year programme. There you are, go and deliver it, and here's the money. And I think we're demonstrating that through the current road investment strategy. So when that's published, everyone will have a clear idea what the agenda for the next 5 years, and that will take us through to 2025. So that is effectively the process. The other thing I suppose I better say is Highways England, we are now a company, and as such, we are scrutinised by the Office of Road and Rail Regulation and Transport Focus. Now we have key business targets to make. We are monitored and scrutinised throughout the whole process. Now they will do an efficiency review of all this to make sure that it stands to scrutiny and that represents everybody. So that is basically the risk process as is, and that's what's ongoing at the moment. Assuming that government, and I would urge people, when it comes to the public consultation, please make reviews known, and things like sort of what we've just talked about, the M&M corridor, whatever solution's coming up there, if you think it's important, you think it's needed, please, because your comments are important, to drive it and make sure that these are taken forward. Now, effectively, the M11, if you're going to upgrade it, you've got two options. You've got to widen it, or we go to what we call smart motorway. Now, government's favour is not to widen roads these days, because it takes extra land take, it has more impact on the environment and local people, etc. So the third option is a smart motorway. And so coming out of this process, I expect, and I'm preempting what's going to come out of that, a proposal to have a smart motorway through there. And what that means, we have it around the country now. You see it around the M25, on the M1, is where the hard shoulder is used as a running lane. So all four, well, 3 lanes go up to 4 lanes, 2 lanes go up to 3 lanes, etc. They become what we call through running. You would have seen various versions, and the problem that we've had is over the years, government says, go and deliver these quickly. So you gather your evidence and you go and build these sort of things, whilst you're trying to understand the impact and what standards you build it. So as a consequence, every scheme's come out, it has evolved. So we've had schemes where the hard shoulder switches on and off, and we've had it where it's switched on between junctions, but at junctions there's the hard shoulder is back in place, and various combinations. But we are now to a standard where it will be all lanes running right the way through. And the evidence showing is actually that works quite well and is quite safe. And it's supported by gantries, speed control, so that when there's any instance on the network, the lanes are closed down. There are emergency refuge areas for people to, if they break down, they can go into that. And it's supported by our traffic officer service.
So can we start
Of
the
course.
question and answers? Because I
Yeah.
think we've got lots of questions.
Okay, I do apologise. I'm just trying to explain what a smart motorway is, people can understand. Can I just say one other very quick thing? Very quick thing. In the interim, we are also doing some, because this is going to take 2020 or whatever it is, we are doing some studies of each of the junctions on the M11, just simply to understand the impact there, and there's any smaller tweaks that we can do in conjunction with Cambridge County Council on what they're trying to do in terms of sustainability. So,
Anything you want to say first?
Yeah, I'll just say that the City Deal Board effectively put back the consideration of the online, offline assessment part of the Western Orbital in order to wait for what will come out of the next RIS project.
Bridget. So is there not conflict between what we're discussing today, which is a Western Orbital, which is essentially the increasing size of the existing motorway, the government's preferred option, which is not to do that in order to minimise land take, and for smart motorways? It seems there's a complete conflict here between what the City Deal is proposing and what government's preference is.
well, first of all, a smart motorway is not taking land take.
No,
Because
the Western Orbital will.
Okay, but smart motorway, which we're responsible for,
Yeah.
won't, but it will provide additional capacity. So it will get you to the Cambridge area. The whole object of the Western Orbital, my understanding, and it's really for Cambridge County Council to be speaking about that, is about how do you get people sustainably into Cambridge and around Cambridge, isn't it? So it's about using public transport, cycling, walking, and all those other facilities in respect, the park and rides, and that's what it's all about. That is something the City Deal's taking forward, and we're working with them on what options they can take forward.
I think that's the point that I was making, is that that's why they deferred the decision effectively to see what came out of the highways.
Okay, so if I could just follow up, so why can't smart motorways achieve those goals of getting people sustainably and efficiently around and in and out of Cambridge?
Well,
why do we need another tranche of concrete to do it?
Well, the tranche of concrete, you have to ask Cambridge County Council how they want to get people in Cambridge. This is about, the M11 is near capacity. It's about reducing entry capacity there. It gets people there. The junctions, to use a technical word, are fairly stuffed. At peak times, there are people queuing back down the slip roads. There is a problem there. So you can get people to Cambridge, but you've got to get them into Cambridge. And so the whole point of this is, how do you get them into Cambridge? And so these sort of ideas coming forward from the City Deal is how you do that, and the Western Orbital is one of those things.
Are you saying they can't run, they won't be able to run buses down the M11?
So that is a suggestion. So what it is, what you're saying there is, well, why can't you have buses go down the hard shoulder? Can you imagine the safety implications of that? The hard shoulder at the moment is a lane there in order to provide emergency breakdown and all that sort of facility.
Sorry, no, I'm talking about after it's been upgraded, could you run buses down?
Well, you can run buses down it, but like any other vehicle. But we will have 4 lanes of controlled motorway for all vehicles. To try and segregate one for use on another, it just won't work, and I can't see how you would make that work, to be honest, in a safe manner.
Hi, thank you. Hi, I'm going to quote here from an article and a study by Highways England. You probably are familiar. One 16-mile section of the M25 that was upgraded recorded journey times of 8% longer during peak periods despite the hard shoulder being operational. Another 10-mile stretch that benefited from an additional lane failed to improve journey times too. After all the billions spent and the disruption in roadworks on the M25, there's been no improvement. If you build roads, they will fill up with traffic. And the AA has called for a rethink of the design of smart motorways as it believes the lack of emergency stopping areas is dangerous. So my question is, if you do this to the M11, how will you prevent these problems from occurring, especially since what you'll be effectively doing is tempting people out of buses, and in fact, you'll be in direct competition with the Western Orbital. You'll be tempting them not to use the Western Orbital buses and get back in their cars, which is in contravention with city deal and local plans.
Well, that's not quite correct, because, well, in terms of road safety, there are, on smart motorways, there are emergency refuge areas. That's the first thing. They are spaced, particularly to get vehicles which are broken down off the road as quickly as possible. It is supported, and I don't know what information what you were saying there, where that comes from exactly. It is supported by traffic control, and it is CCTV cameras. We have a regional control centre, and they're monitored 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Traffic officer service, and we're there, close the lane down, and you get some sorted. And the evidence shows that those operate safely. This is why it's taken a long time to get to this level of standard. It's taken a long time because it's very nervous about losing the idea of hard shoulders. It works elsewhere, it doesn't why it can't work here. Second point we were talking about there, which is about the Western Orbital, etc. This is about providing easier opportunities to get along the M11. You're still going to get on it, you're still going to get off it. You know, you can have a wide road there, you can't get on and off it. It doesn't make any difference. So the point of all this is, okay, you get someone closer. I mean, it's only 428, the A40 is going to get you to Cambridge, and you've got to get into Cambridge. So you need your sustainable methods to do that, because there's no other way. So a Western Orbital, park and ride, etc., you can take people straight off the motorway and then into the other loads, get them into town.
I'm sorry, can you answer the...
2 more questions, actually. And then
But I didn't get an answer to the point about the induced demand, which is that it attracts more journeys onto the motorway by taking them away from other modes. And in fact, on the M25, it resulted in even the people who had to drive had a worse journey time as a result.
I'll answer that very quickly. The M25 is an orbital thing around London. It does not have control of the junctions, and you can go to the junctions, and then you've got big wide roads to go wherever you want. And you're absolutely right, you do more tarmac, more people will move it. We're in a controlled environment here. You can come off the M11, and you still can't get to Cambridge, whichever road it is, because that's that capacity. There's no proposal to widen roads into Cambridge. It's saying you get to the junctions quicker, and then you come off. So it's not proposing, I don't suggest, to generate reduced traffic. It's about getting people from A to B in a combination of a sustainable way. You know, there's no point having Western Orbitals and park and rides if you can't get to them. So the idea of getting maximum capacity on the motorway is to get them to those points where they can interchange.
Okay, I'm going to allow 2 more questions, then I think we need to move on. Janet, you've been asking
Just
for
to the point
something.
thank you. Just to the point of fact, does the work you're going to do include work on the Hauxton interchange? Are you going to be looking at
What is being considered with the Carpen interchange under Item C?
So, what we talked about through the route strategies, etc., is gathering the evidence and all the views that everyone has put into that process, including yourself, etc. And what will come out of that will be recommendations to go into that. So, we'll have to see what comes out of those recommendations.
You have-
Now, I don't know exactly what's going to come out of that and what's going to come forward.
Yes.
Yes, with Cambridge County Council, there is a bit of work going on looking at Girton, and people are talking about what they call the missing links, you know, and putting in from the A428 up to, on the new scheme where the local road is, around about, across that and down again. You have to be a bit careful when you start talking about those sort of options, because that's not just for access to Turn 11, that then allows rat running, and that moves traffic in a different way around there. But that's been looked at, and we will provide all that information for others to consider.
Okay. Final question, chap at the back.
You mentioned the 428, but you haven't mentioned anything about the A10 either at the moment, and with the considerable expansion in Royston, and it's still growing quicker, the amount of traffic that's actually coming down the A10 is sort of grown so much in the last 20, 30 years. It's incredible.
Absolutely. The only problem I have is it's not part of the street road network. So I think you'll have to ask the questions to Cambridge County Council, because we don't manage the road. We used to, back in 2001, but when government changed what they considered to be the key priority roads in terms of national level.
The 428 is one of your roads at the A10.
Sorry?
The 428 is one of your roads.
The 428, the M11, the A14, those are the key ones in the area. All the other roads there are managed by the local authority.
Okay, I missed Steve, so one more question.
Just a question, are you confident about the quality of your modelling? I mean, the reason I ask that is that we've got now the upgrading the A428 from Black Cat to effectively to Cambridge to get given through. You, in doing the A14, said that your models would show that you could reduce the A428, even now, down to a single lane, which is what you're doing in the new junction of Girton. And you wouldn't have any tailbacks, it wouldn't be a problem. You've actually got your own experimenting process at the moment, because your works that you're doing have constrained it down to one lane. And guess what? It backs up 3 miles. Now where's your modelling? I was assured by you and a colleague of yours in a public meeting not long ago, our modelling is perfect, it works. It clearly doesn't. So, I mean, I lack a little bit of confidence that you've thought through, or have the capacity, the political pressures perhaps, to actually think this through properly.
Well, the modelling which was used for the A14 scheme, and what we'll look at Girton, and what's done by the city deal, is the same traffic model. It is one and the same model, so we're actually building on
then you technically got it wrong.
So, sorry?
You technically have it wrong then, because you already have tailbacks, and if you reduce it down to a single lane, at the same time as improving the Black Cat to Caxton Gibbet, so you'll have more traffic from Oxford coming to Cambridge, trying to get down to the south of the city, and yet you're constraining it down to a single lane. So the A428 is a wonderful improved expressway as far as your new junction at the A428, the A14 junction, and then you constrain it to one lane, which will cause you big tailbacks.
The A14 and the A428, going to the A14, it will be two lanes.
It's a single lane. It's a double lane which is hatched, which means it effectively is a single lane. When the A428 traffic joins the A14, it is a single lane of traffic. No, it's what you plan in your new junction. So anyway, I think we moved away. All I'm saying is I think we
talk after the meeting.
Okay, happy to do that, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so we're going to move on to item 4. We're going to try and spend 20 minutes on 4, 5 and 6, which will finish us at 8 o'clock, as promised. So, item 4, please.
Okay, so I'll try and go through the slides, and then if people want me to come back and forth, then please do that. I think that might be more efficient. So parking right sides, and this is what the Executive Board agreed, as I mentioned earlier. So this slide just illustrates the demand along the corridor. The plan to the right shows the local implications of growth, both in terms of business and housing, combining with the city deal objectives to provide links from business to business, but housing to business sites as well. The slide on the left is the traffic master data, which shows the sort of pinch points and the points of congestion.
Can I just ask, why aren't the new jobs being located next to the housing? Why is the plan to create journeys to get from where the housing is to where the new jobs
I don't
is?
think it's within the remit of the LLF.
I think that's a much broader question, but I would like to say that largely that's a consideration in the local plan, and the local plan, instead of doing edge of town settlements, came to the decision that the out of town new settlements would be better, such as Campbell, Bourne and Northstowe, those kind of elements, and then to provide sustainable transport between the city and the housing. So I think that's the background to that decision. To talk about the park and ride demand, so there has been a little modelling done to inform the public consultation, as I said, in February and March last year. That modelling is being refreshed now and revised, when I say revised, looked at in terms of the growth forecast as part of the local plan. And if you do have any sort of technical questions about modelling, we have Skanska and Atkins here that should be able to answer your questions better than I will be able to. Principally, this slide shows the demand in and around Junction 11. Okay, so at Junction 11, the board asked that a sequential evaluation will be looked at in terms of the existing park and ride site, so Trumpington park and ride site at Junction 11, to see what can be made, how many spaces can be found effectively on that site by squeezing them in. For those that can't see, the sort of green area highlighted is where additional areas for car parking will be able to be found. There are considerations of landscaping and drainage and things like that will need to be managed, and they're being looked at present. And the red areas are areas that are being evaluated for decking, which is effectively putting another story of car parking on. There is some sort of loss versus benefit in order to get up to the decking. You have to put in ramps and structures, and therefore that loses some car parking spaces that you would then sort of see the benefit of above the existing. So that there is a calculation and assessment to be looked at, but the basic principle is that the park and ride existing at Junction 11, the Trumpington site, will be evaluated for how many possible additional car parking spaces can be found at that site, and that will then be balanced in relation to the need for these forecasts generated by the local plan growth up to 2031. So if it's found, and if the City of Board decides that the capacity at the existing park and ride is not sufficient to provide car parking for that demand, then this is the site that was in the public consultation last year, Hauxton side of the M11, and the blue and the two green elements there just indicate a crossing of how vehicles, buses and cars may, or whether it's buses or cars, be able to access into the existing site at Trumpington and then further on their journey from those in that location.
May I ask a question, please? How will you get transport vehicles coming off the junction into New Park Ride? Presumably they will have to go across the A10.
So coming from the A10?
Yeah, from the junction here, from junction 11. Presumably they'll have to come this way or around this way and then cross the A10 here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. 20,000 vehicles plus on the A10 at that point. So what are you going to do? Put in small traffic lights?
So there are a number of options. So there are a number of options depending on if that site is chosen. There will be further feasibility work undertaken about how that site might be accessed. It could be under or indeed over, or it could be a roundabout or signal junction. So all of those options could be available. That's the end of the sort of Junction 11 section. Yeah.
Okay. We have two resolutions that are raised here, but actually I think we'll just have 5 minutes of the floor.
Yeah.
Okay. Chaplain?
Yeah, is that in addition to, so when you open this expansion, is that an additional site so the other one is kept? Or do you fund this one from turning the other one into housing?
The assessment is that should the additional site be required, that there will be 2 parking lot sites.
Within half a mile of one another.
Yeah.
To seem rather ludicrous.
Well, it's a capacity thing, so the point is providing additional capacity. One site, in terms of the operation about how 2 sites might be managed and working together effectively to manage the transport, it may well be the case that one park and ride site is used for a function and another park and ride is used for another. That will be evaluated should that site be taken forward by the board, how the 2 sites will work together.
Okay, the chaplain, the chair.
I'm Andrew Roberts from the Trumpington Residents Association. Tim, if you wouldn't mind going back to the existing park and ride diagram. As Tim said, there are 2 proposals on the table. One to add a second level, multi-storey level, where marked in red, and one to add further capacity around the perimeter of the site. We are very against any second level. We feel that would be very, very detrimental. That red area on the north of the diagram there is adjacent to new multi-storey housing. The new residents who've moved in would be looking directly onto that parking facility. It's also the direct line where many children go to the Trumpington Meadows Primary School, which is where the word ride is on that diagram. So we believe that would be very environmentally destructive and negative. We accept the potential for more capacity at the site, but we would be against too much loss of the green space around the edge of the site marked in green there. At present, there's an important wildlife pond and there's the tree belt. The new housing for Trumpington Meadows is going immediately adjacent to that. Those trees are an important screen between the new housing about to be built and the park and ride site. And then finally, fundamentally, any additional capacity here will lead to additional congestion at Junction 11 and on Hauxton Road. So any significant capacity would need to be looked at with real caution.
What I'd like is and it frequently comes up, it keeps coming up, is we see plans like this constantly, but we don't actually see the housing, the proximity of housing and social and communities nearby. It's a repeated issue. So with all of these park and ride sites, if in future we can see a more general plan which does show the proper extent and of built area.
Can I speak up? So in the Assembly, when we've discussed this, it's been brought up a number of times about why can't we go underground rather than overground? And we know that doesn't seem, has anybody actually looked at that as an option, going down rather than up?
One of the reasons would be that if you were to go underground, that there would have to be a closure of the park and ride, which would be involve more management of the 1,300 spaces that are there at the moment if you were to bore underneath. But I suppose it's the management of the structure and the cost-benefit analysis that would...
But do we know what that cost-benefit analysis is? Has anyone done that analysis? But the problem is that a lot of these decisions seem to be made anecdotally rather than evidentially.
So I don't have that figure to hand.
Has it been done?
A cost, an approximation of a cost has been done for a new structure, but no, I don't understand that an assessment of the cost.
Should we ask for that to be done?
Well, yeah.
Can we ask for that to be done?
Yeah.
What were you going to ask for, Helen, sorry?
I suppose that the evaluation of the 3, then it's increasing of the existing floor space and using that decking and tunnelling or however.
Because in London, they go underground. Routinely, they go underground. So, we know it's quite possible.
Yeah. They're normally done in the first instance with that facility there and then it's like that. But I accept your point.
But could I reiterate that additional capacity will lead to additional congestion at Junction 11 and on Hauxton Road?
Sorry. Listening to everything you've said, I do have a slight challenge with any of the models. Simple reason being is smart motorway, you're talking about moving more people into 2 park and ride sites, if both of them are given the go-ahead either for expansion or even a development within Hauxton. So smart motorway, you remove that ability for people at the moment to queue up on the M11 because you're going to open that that particular lane up. You're going to back up the Trumpington even further because you've got more cars going in there. You've then got cars going off right or left going into Hauxton to queue to get into the park and ride because it's not going to be simple to get across. So you're going to have the same issue on the other side. You've then got people coming down the A10, they're going to block that up. I just think it's that age-old expression, if you build it, they will come, right? So if you look at the thing that they've done with Cambridge North, you've put 450 car parking spaces in there, for example. That could be expanded. It takes 13 minutes or something on the train to get from that side of Cambridge into the city by train. I'm absolutely convinced that we can put a proposition forward because all the studies that have been done are all focused on the north of Cambridge and those three key developments there, and where the majority of those traffic journeys are going to occur are coming from there into the Science Park and those surrounding areas where the jobs are. I just think if we encourage people to go more on the rail rather than building more park and rides as a solution, that is the answer, because those areas that have been already purchased and built on, there's absolutely nothing to stop us from expanding that 450 car parking space, make it greater. Use some of the cash that you're talking about for this to subsidise rail fares through parking, you're still going to get revenue in. I just think park and ride as a solution is lunacy that close to the city. You look at Oxford, they've got 4 key centres in different parts of the city, and they get people off the road, and it does work. They've removed parking ability really in the centre of Oxford, and they've got people onto the buses. Here, people don't necessarily want to go on the bus, which is why people still go in their car because there's available parking in the city centre. I can't express strongly enough how the park and ride scheme is fundamentally flawed, considering the ability that we have to expand roads going into the centre of Cambridge to cut congestion down, for example. And I just can't see that a sticky plaster solution like the Hauxton park and ride is ever going to fix the problem. It will be at capacity by the time it's built anyway. Anyway, that's just my view.
Okay, I'm going to allow one more question because some people want to move on this. Anybody else? No? Okay, so do we want to object to the 2-storey proposal? What do people feel about that? Yes. Okay, so wording for a red Tory, we do not think it is a reasonable proposal to 2-storey the existing Trumpington.
Certainly from Trumpington, we would really welcome a resolution or a proposal that the 2-storey expansion of the current site would be counterproductive in terms of its environmental impact and the additional congestion at Junction 11 and Hauxton Road which would result.
And the impact on the local community.
Yes, in the environmental impact.
And is that for the underground element as well, or just the decking?
Just the decking.
Okay.
Did you get that, Katie?
I don't understand why, if the 2-storey building creates additional traffic problems, why wouldn't underground as well? It's exactly the same amount of vehicles going to the same area. It's got to be both or none.
There's got to be an alternative solution to the park and ride scheme that close to the city centre. You're just creating additional traffic flows from centre that people want to get access to. When we've got a perfectly good underused rail network as it stands at the moment, we've got regional stations in Hauxton, we've got regional stations in Whittlesford. All of those can be expanded without any major impact on the local community. You look at Whittlesford's railway station, it's not overlooked, there's a hotel there. I doubt very much they would mind too much having extra trade if people were going there. And the same with Hauxton.
Yeah, okay. Ashley, do you want to make a point?
So before you vote on this point, just for context, the big pressure here is the CBC site, because that's a huge growth area. There's obviously the relocation of the Patchwork Hospital. All of the modelling, I know we talked about modelling, but the modelling is showing that over the next few years, the huge growth in jobs at that site is going to be the main impactful thing. You know, what we already know anecdotally is that there is a lot of pressure on that road, particularly at peak times overflow. So the idea behind expansion in the short term is to help alleviate some of those issues. So I would ask the LLF to consider that point as well.
How many spaces can be made without double storey?
I believe it's only a couple of hundred on the ground floor.
Yeah, so effectively with the green area there.
How much do we need?
A couple of hundred, I think with the red area as well, another couple of hundred more.
And what percentage of that come from along the A10 corridor. So if
So
you
actually
could
the slide,
intercept
I know
them
you can't see
earlier,
it
maybe
very
it
well,
wouldn't be so.
but approximately 60% is along the M11.
And 40% along the... So if you
For
could
other roads.
if
So-
you could intercept them earlier, which I think our resolution suggests, then that wouldn't be so full, would it?
Well, I think, for example, if you're coming from the M11 and dare I jump ahead to the Hauxton location, that actually that isn't closer.
Okay, Lucy.
Can I just ask one thing about the double story? What your argument you use, which I find absolutely outrageous, because you keep using it in connection with that, also the A420 busway, is this argument that we should build a 2-storey block because it will cause less disruption during the build. And I do think there has to be some kind of principle. We're talking about a historic city here. And if it takes another couple of months to build underground, or we'll find the money and we'll go underground. I think this argument you keep using because I've heard it multiple times in connection with the busway, etc., that actually is just quicker, and that's the reason. Because what worries me is that this 2-storey principle, you can start to roll that out in all these park and rides, and suddenly you'll be approaching historic Cambridge, and you'll be seeing, it'll be like Milton Keynes, or these monstrous 2-storey things emerging from the ground, and that's terrible. Well, I don't know if you have actually.
Oh, sorry.
No overground.
I think the resolution was made no overground.
Yeah, I think it's about having having the least worst option. So, you know, if there is an evidence based, which we can't argue with, about there having to be extra capacity, if we had a forced choice between 2-storey or underground, I think as the LLF we should be saying that our least worst option is the increased capacity, but delivered underground rather than above ground.
We have considered this a lot within Hauxton, within our meetings, and in talking to Tim. We feel that an underground development would be very counterproductive. If you obviously know Hauxton Road, as you go into the park and ride site at the moment, it wouldn't just be a matter of putting an extra level under the park and ride site. It would require new roads, new infrastructure going into the site and to the site. It would be a major impact on that environment where many people live very close in proximity to the road. We really feel that a significant increase in capacity at this site is not a long-term solution.
Lucy, I just want to focus a little bit on what we can achieve as an LLF, and one of the things that we can do is say that we think one option is slightly preferable to another one. So in this case, it's quite possible to say that we don't think that 2 storeys on the existing site is acceptable because of the impact on the residents and because of the impact on the approach to historic Cambridge. Both of those are extremely valid views, but I think we need to then accept that what we're doing is pushing the City Deal Board towards an expansion to the west of the M11. And I'm perfectly happy that that might be what the LLF wants to do, and if we make this resolution, then that's the direction that we're pushing them in. But I think we need to be really clear that that's the decision that we are recommending. And we could say that we don't think that's a good option either, and we should look at building underground. I think there's a question about whether the capacity of underground would be sufficient, but at least we could ask the question. And I think if as an LLF our preference is for underground, then we can say that. But I think we need to be very clear about what it is part of our role, in a way that kind of saying we shouldn't be building park and rides, we should be looking at rail transport. That's actually slightly beyond what this LLF is able to do. It's a perfectly valid point, but we can't necessarily guide the City Deal Board in that direction, and they don't really have the capacity either. We can say we think this option is better than that option, and that is absolutely what we're here to do. But I think we need to be clear about what the options we're going for are.